All right, let's jump right into this explainer because today we are unpacking a piece of modern folklore that is, honestly, guaranteed to send a shiver down your spine. We're digging into a terrifying urban legend that preys on our deepest fears. Things like isolation, fear of the unknown, and, well, the literal ghosts of our past. If you've ever found yourself totally alone in the dark, this breakdown is going to resonate with you on a very visceral level. So, picture this. Have you ever taken a taxi late at night only to realize your driver wasn't alive? It's a completely chilling setup, isn't it? The tale we're analyzing today frames its horror with this exact unsettling premise, pulling us into this dark, cautionary tale about who, or what, might be sharing our space in the dead of night. But today's story actually flips that trope on its head. It focuses on a driver who accepted one final passenger, a passenger who, according to the legend, had already been dead for 5 years. Stick with me here, because understanding the mechanics of how this story ends is going to absolutely haunt you. To really grasp the horror of this event, we have to look at the setting the original tale gives us. We are talking about a cold, rainy night in New York City with almost completely empty streets. It's meant to establish total, utter isolation. Answer our protagonist, Daniel. He's a hardworking guy in his early 40s, and he's been driving taxis for over 15 years. He knows these streets like the back of his hand. And honestly, it's this incredibly mundane, relatable foundation that makes the supernatural elements we're about to explore so much more impactful. And right here is where the timeline becomes absolutely crucial. It's 2:57 a.m., that literal dead hour of the night where the whole city is asleep. Daniel is driving the only yellow taxi left on the road. He's exhausted, he's ready to go home, but he whispers to himself, just one more passenger. It's a fatal decision. He is completely isolated out there, making him the absolute perfect target for what happens next. Now, what's really fascinating about the lore here is how methodically the environment breaks down around him. It doesn't just jump straight to the paranormal. First, Daniel's phone completely loses its signal, severing his connection to the outside world. Second, the radio starts spitting out this strange, heavy static, which is a classic auditory cue that something is very wrong. And then finally, step 3, beside an abandoned road, a lone woman appears. She's wearing a white dress, holding an old black umbrella. The tension is built step by step, effectively trapping Daniel before this passenger even opens the car door. So the woman slowly opens the back door and sits down without saying a single word. Daniel, being the professional he is, smiles and asks, "Where to?" What follows is just dead silence. And then, a few agonizing seconds later, she delivers her destination. "Take me to Blackwood Cemetery." But listen to how the legend describes her voice, because this is important. It's a soft whisper. It sounds distant, almost like an echo from a tunnel. Daniel freezes, naturally questioning why anyone would go there at 3 a.m., but she simply nods. And, despite every alarm bell ringing in his head, he starts driving. Notice how methodically this tension builds as they drive, because the sensory details in the source material are absolutely suffocating. Put yourself in that driver's seat for a second. Minute 5, the rain gets heavier. You look in your rearview mirror and the woman is staring out the window, completely still, not even blinking. Her skin is unnaturally pale. Minute 10, the environment actually turns hostile. The taxi becomes freezing cold, so cold that Daniel's breath turns into mist, even though his heater should be on. Finally, at minute 15, a smell fills the car. Wet soil, old flowers, and something rotten. It's the distinct, unmistakable scent of a freshly dug grave. Halfway to the cemetery, that creeping dread turns into pure, outright panic. Daniel glances into the rearview mirror again, and nothing. The back seat is totally empty. The tale hits us with this sudden, impossible reality. Daniel slams on the brakes. He physically turns around. There is absolutely no one back there. It completely shatters whatever rational, logical explanation Daniel might have been clinging to. But that brief relief of an empty car, yeah, it doesn't last. A whisper comes literally right beside his ear. "Don't stop." Daniel screams, whips his head around, and the horror escalates. She is sitting exactly where she had been before. But now, she's smiling. And the story heavily emphasizes that it is a smile far too wide, far too unnatural for a human face. He's now officially trapped in a moving metal box with something that defies the laws of nature. They finally arrive. Blackwood Cemetery is bleak, to put it mildly. There are no guards, no streetlights, just endless, heavy darkness. And as they pull up, the giant iron gates slowly open all by themselves. The woman steps out and hands Daniel his fare, an old $50 bill. But it looks ancient, like it's been buried, and it's covered in dry dirt. She whispers, "Wait for me," before just walking into the cemetery and disappearing entirely into the thick fog. So the turning point of the legend is this agonizing wait. 5 minutes go by, then 10, then 30 whole minutes. She never comes back. I mean, can you imagine the psychological toll of sitting alone in the dark outside a spooky cemetery for half an hour, holding a dirt-covered $50 bill? Confused and undeniably terrified, Daniel grabs his heavy flashlight and decides to go in after her. He walks through this howling wind, noting how every single grave looks identical in the dark, until he finds something highly unusual. Fresh, muddy footprints leading straight toward an old grave. He follows those footprints, and they stop abruptly right in front of a weathered tombstone. He shines his flashlight on the stone, and his blood just freezes. The inscription reads, "Emily Carter, born 1993, died 2021. But right below the name is a small porcelain picture. It's the same face, the exact same woman in the same white dress that was just sitting in his back seat. And to make it even more terrifying, he notices fresh flowers resting on the soil. They are still wet from the rain. Someone, or something, had visited that grave that very night. Just as Daniel stumbles backward, his heart practically beating out of his chest from this impossible discovery, the narrative takes a sharp turn. An old cemetery caretaker suddenly appears right out of the pitch-black darkness. He startles Daniel, asking, "What are you doing here?" Daniel, completely frantic at this point, explains everything that just happened with the fair and the woman. And instead of calling him crazy, the caretaker's face turns sheet white. He slowly looks down at Emily Carter's grave, confirming Daniel's absolute worst fears. And here is where the deeper lore of the legend truly unfolds. The caretaker looks at Daniel with pity and whispers, "You're the 7th taxi driver." Daniel is completely bewildered. The old man sighs and reveals this incredibly dark truth. Every single year, on the exact anniversary of her tragic death, Emily Carter takes a taxi home. Daniel wasn't just in the wrong place at the wrong time, folks. He was an unwitting participant in a deadly, supernatural annual ritual. The stakes are immediately cranked up to life or death as the caretaker explains the mechanics of this curse. What happened to the other 6 drivers? Well, none of them ever recovered. Some of them disappeared forever without a trace. Some completely lost their minds and ended up institutionalized. And one died under mysterious circumstances exactly 7 days later. The heavy realization hits Daniel that he isn't just dealing with a random ghost sighting. He has been permanently marked by one. Terrified out of his mind, Daniel runs for his life. He sprints all the way back to his taxi and violently cranks the ignition, desperate to escape this nightmare. But the very second the engine turns over, the car radio clicks on all by itself. Cutting right through the static, that same distant, echoey woman's voice whispers, "Thank you for bringing me home." The nightmare isn't over. In fact, it's just reaching its climax. The rearview mirror physically tilts down on its own. Daniel looks up into it, and the backseat is occupied again. The woman is sitting right there, smiling that terrible, unnatural smile, but now, her eyes are completely solidly black. Daniel screams and just slams the accelerator to the floorboard. What happens next is this frantic, inescapable panic. A literal, endless loop. Daniel is speeding through the empty streets like a madman. But every single traffic light he hits instantly turns red. Every road he takes seems to stretch on endlessly into the fog. And the really scary part? No matter where he turns, no matter how fast he drives away, he always returns to the exact same place. The giant iron gates of Blackwood Cemetery. Again and again and again. He is entirely trapped in her domain. As dawn finally begins to break over the city, the loop reaches its fatal conclusion. The woman slowly leans forward from the back seat. She leans right up into Daniel's ear, so close he can feel the freezing air, and whispers this final horrifying sentence. "Now, it's your turn." And with that, the legend tells us, everything just goes black. Which brings us to the bleak aftermath. The next morning, reality sets back in, and the authorities arrive on the scene. The police find the yellow taxi parked right outside the gates of Blackwood Cemetery. The engine is mysteriously still idling. The driver's door is swung wide open. But Daniel, the reliable, hard-working driver of 15 years, has vanished forever.
He has officially become the 7th victim of the Blackwoods passenger. When investigators search the abandoned vehicle, they find only 2 physical pieces of evidence that this wasn't just some random run-of-the-mill disappearance. First, sitting right there on the center console is one old, muddy $50 bill, the exact ancient fare she handed him. And second, there is something left on the fogged-up rear window of the taxi. Someone or something had used a finger to slowly write a message in the condensation on the glass, and it simply read, "See you next year." It's a chilling reminder that the cycle isn't broken. Emily Carter will return.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The next time you find yourself totally alone, driving through empty streets in the dead of night, who might be waiting on an abandoned road, just looking for a ride home? Thank you so much for unpacking this terrifying source material with me today. Stay curious, and please, stay safe out there.